morning I'm going to introduce our wonderful programming director, Alexandra Leotopoulos. Alexandra, I'm passing you the mic.
Thanks for the introduction, Chris. Our theme for this upcoming year is the Gordian Knot. With this theme, we will focus on understanding the various obstacles present in different industries and how to overcome them. Today's podcast will focus on this and specifically the obstacles professional women often face while trying to build successful careers. Today, to answer some questions regarding these kinds of obstacles, it's my pleasure to welcome Irina Kapetanakis, President of the Hellenic Professional Woman organization, along with our founder and CEO, Professor Chris Salboudis. Irina is an entrepreneur, investor, and consultant. She has diverse interests with the shared goal of encouraging others to be great leaders by defining the purpose to their work. With this in mind, she continuously seeks investments in woman-led, female-focused companies with strong and passionate leadership that are disrupting the status quo. We are excited to hear from her today and work with the Hellenic Professional Women organization on future initiatives. Thank you both for being here today. I'm excited to get the conversation started.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're going to discuss some topics, like I mentioned before, about overcoming obstacles in our respective industries with a focus on our experience as professional women. My first question to both of you will be, how has the experience of women in your industry changed since the last generation to the current generation? I'll start with Irina, and then Chris, you can add some input as well.
Well, I think that there's been a lot of change, some good, some bad. I think that one of the things that we've seen nowadays is that, women are really empowered to do more, and really in positions of leadership more so than before. We still have a ways to go, but we're definitely seeing that shift. I do think that one of the things that has remained the same, which is something that definitely needs to change, is that although we've taken on more responsibility professionally, and in our careers, a lot of times it's just added to the list of things that we are required and being asked to do by society, by our just general environment. And so what happens is, I think that we're seeing women in stressful situations with more anxiety, more stress than ever before, just because the laundry list of what they have on their to-do list has just grown versus shifting. And so I think that that's something that needs to get worked on, especially as women continue to take on more empowering roles, more higher roles within organizations, or more entrepreneurial roles, and doing things on their own. There needs to be kind of a line that's drawn in terms of what are their priorities, what do they need to accomplish, whether it be daily, monthly, annually, so that it isn't that stressful and they can accomplish more. So I think that needs to shift from the perspective of kind of how the environment around us has placed a lot of pressure.
Right, and I see that at least most of the time, women wear multiple hats. So they're not only just career people, they're mothers, they're wives, they're the commander of the house, so to speak. So they're taking on not only, they're not growing professionally, but they're doing things in their personal life that require them to, again, have this laundry list of things to do. So I agree with what you're saying. Chris?
Thanks. I actually agree with a lot of what Irina says. And in some ways, really, the previous generation of professional women busted open the proverbial glass ceiling for us, leaving room for the next generations to continue with the challenge. But the experience has changed because the generation that's ranging sort of from the 40s and higher have been raised to be soldiers in this battle for, feminist battle for success in the workplace and work-life balance and all these great things. But the generations following are not necessarily motivated in the same unified direction. There's a lot of new sociological and technological distractions in the present day that really kind of tend to interfere. And then, as Irina said, there's a lot of, new challenges that basically they clutter our lives instead of allowing us to do what we need to. And so it falls kind of in that category of what I spoke about in one of our earlier podcasts about toxicity. So there's a lot of competitive toxicity in the social and professional settings that previous generations didn't face because they were the first to break barriers, whereas we're kind of stuck in this quagmire where we have to not just do our jobs with dignity and professionalism, but also we have to combat toxicity from within our group as professional women, and then also from outside with others who don't have the same value system.
You mentioned about not that this generation is not as motivated. Um, why do you see that? And I know that you, as a professor, you're working with kids all the time. Why do you see that the kids aren't as motivated nowadays? Do you think social media plays a role? Do you think that there's not enough emphasis on people going into like professional career, that because there's so many new uh like content creators, all of these like marketing kind of roles that younger people are taking on the social media realm, that are demotivating young professionals from taking on careers in like more traditional roles?
It's, it's not just about social media, but social media is part of the problem because what's happening is students are getting distracted by things like body image and other uh, personal issues, and they don't really know themselves as much as we used to. We used to just know here's the goal and then run towards it. But now there's a lot more questioning that's, it's socially permitted and it's great, but we have to use that permission and empower ourselves through it, and that hasn't happened yet. I haven't seen it happen. It's the rare occasion. Like there are some young professionals in our group who have it because they have that sense of, okay, I'm going to take what's around me and use it to empower myself, and so they use social media to empower themselves. They use the question of body image or gender image or all of these other things, and they use it as a starting point to flourish. But we all need to find that kind of Aristotelian means of flourishing, which is not generally taking place in the majority of the generation, which is like where I see our generation as professors and professional women and mentors. That's our job, to help the generation that's right behind us, to help them get to this point where we are so that they feel empowered. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I would add to that and say that not just social media, but I would say technology in general has really kind of changed the dynamic for most young people. And I would say that, we're living in an environment now where everything comes quickly. News, information, everything can come to you with the click of a button. And so I think that we're in an environment where kids today, young people today, are used to getting things very fast. And what happens is that translates into the professional world. And I've seen it with a lot of people that I've employed and that I've worked with that are much younger than I am. And what ends up happening is they're so used to things happening so quickly, they expect things to happen quickly professionally as well. And I think that we're seeing a lot of, I don't want to say the word entitlement because there's a negative connotation to that, but I do think that because things happen so quickly around them and they're so used to things just moving at such a fast pace that, even success to them has to happen quickly. And so, moving into new roles, getting promoted, getting new jobs, they expect that to happen at a pace that's a lot faster than what my generation was expecting. Like I've gone through jobs where, it's been where years went by and I was trying to get to a higher level and trying to get a new position, and I stuck with it and I was patient and I was able to kind of achieve what my goals were. So there's kind of this dichotomy between the thought process of somebody that's my generation that's employing somebody of a younger generation and really trying to get into their mindset, because there's something to be said for working hard for something, but also showing that over a period of time. And I think that there's a definite shift in how people view kind of their progress. And it really does have to do, I think, with technology and with the way information is shared these days.
So I see you mentioned entitlement, and I know you like technically it has a negative connotation in this sense, but I was speaking to someone recently because I recently graduated and I'm in the job search, and they were telling me how they've noticed that the people that they've been hiring lately, they want the higher salaries. They want to be promoted after 2 years. And if they're not promoted, they're more than happy to just pick up and leave the job. And there's no sense of loyalty anymore, dedication to the role because they just want to move up quickly. But I feel like while the majority may be like that, you still have some people that value that, hard work, perseverance kind of mentality. Um, and I feel like we need to kind of go back to that. And I don't know how we'll do that, or who's like going to help make that shift. But that leads into the next question as we talk about progress. But what progress has been made, and what are some setbacks that our generation is experiencing? I know we mentioned technology, but are there any other ones that could be considered?
Do you want to start off?
Sure. I mean, I definitely think, like I said, technology is probably at the top of the list of setbacks. I also think that the expectations of what a woman can achieve, and I'll say woman because I'm a woman, but it really is it can be, it can really be for anyone, but the expectation of what a woman should achieve and should do in a way that is, quote unquote perfect is very stressful. I mean, I think that with social media kind of presenting this perfect image of women who are perfect career women and wonderful, homemakers and absolutely perfect moms, and everything's just going so smoothly. We're adding to the pressure on already that we have with the things that we're doing. So instead of kind of taking it a little bit slower and just realizing that there are going to be days that, career will come first or family will come second or whatever that may be, in order to get through the needs of that day, that week, we don't cut ourselves enough slack. And I think women also put pressure on other women to potentially reach that level of perfection, which doesn't exist. And I think that we talk about work-life balance, which to me, that's such a misnomer because there really is no balance. The balance is imbalance because every day there's going to be different needs, different things that require more of your attention. And you have to be willing to shift and to focus where your focus needs to be. And so I think that, we put pressure on ourselves. And again, we add to that laundry list of things that we need to get done and do it well and do it, to the point of, perfection, which is, in this society is Instagram postable. And, it's just not reality. And I think that we look back on past generations and, they didn't have that pressure. They didn't have that pressure of competing with people they know or these figures on social media or on TV or on the internet. And I think that they just did the best they could. And really that's what we should be asking ourselves, because for everyone that's going to be different. For everyone, the goals are going to be different. And so by making it this blanket goal of being great at your career, being great at home, being a wonderful friend, being a perfect daughter, all these things that we're adding to that list might not necessarily be the specific goals that each individual has. And so I think we need to just take that step back and really just prioritize for ourselves and kind of get rid of the noise.
I really like that because it's funny. I have some friends that if it's not Instagrammable, they won't do it. And it's like these are the expectations that we're setting for ourselves. We can't even just go out and do things for ourselves or for like the betterment of ourselves if it's not like worthy of being published. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's such a disadvantage because we're like not able to we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to experience things because we have these such high expectations of what reality is.
definitely.
Chris?
Yes, so I agree with what Irina was saying, and I'll add to it that I've noticed many of the strides that were made from the 1960s to, let's say, 2016 have been recently dwindling. The language has changed. A lot of stress, as Irina was saying, has been added on, and it's more recent, not just with the coming of social media, but also social and administrative toxicity, and I'll say toxicity again, has been closing in, and it's up to this generation and the one right behind us to step up our game in supporting one another rather than contributing to the problem and tearing one another down. For example, there was a recent discussion about the difference between professional men and women, with a comment about men being more reliable because women are more tied to their families, which I just really reject with everything that's in me, because having been my whole life a professional woman, and having seen in front of me the example of professional women, I agree with what Irina said, that work-life balance is not a perfect thing. It's a juggling act. It's just basically what it is. From day to day, you just have to assess the situation and then move forward from there and do the best that you can. There's not one perfect way to do it. But to say that professional women are unreliable throws a real stick in the wheel, and hinders the progress of the generations behind us who hear someone high level saying this and really maybe start to believe it, and which is a problem. Personally, having balanced both my family and professional obligations since my school years, I don't see being female as a particular obstacle to being a reliable professional. And I was really deeply offended by the comment. And I know a lot of other people who are listening were also offended by it. And I feel like it's something that emerged from the 1820s rather than from 2023. I was really surprised by it.
Chris, I'll say one more thing though to add to what you said, is that things I do see a change since 2016. I'll even come to the pandemic. I think that the pandemic created even more of a shift that's taken us back a couple steps. There were over 1 million women that left the labor force during the pandemic, and they accounted for 63% of all the jobs that were lost. And so I think that, again, that goes back to, why should it be the woman that has to take that step back, whether it be for family or for other reasons? And I think that it's something that in some cases we're doing to ourselves. And I think that we need to find ourselves back to the place where we're on a positive trajectory going forward. I think that, there needs to be more of a respect for women in the workplace, especially in professional and senior roles, because, women add a different viewpoint than men. And I think it's just, what is it? Women are from men, Mars are from Venus. I think that there is something to be said for that. And we look at things differently. And so having that more well-rounded viewpoint, especially in positions of leadership and decision-making, is critical for success of any business.
There's another book I want to put on your radar, Irina. It's called Machiavelli for Women, and it's by a friend of mine, Stacey Vanek Smith. She has a chapter that fits this moment perfectly, because she talks about how women network differently by nature than men do. So how people usually use the web metaphor, she uses the octopus metaphor, and she says, this is how we network. We're always juggling like 8 things at the same time, and we can connect them to each other because we see how many steps ahead. We see how this is going to work, how many steps ahead, right? And it's something that is less linear and less direct than what was typically perceived as the normal way of networking. So having women on the workforce is a real strength, because it helps add diversity, not just at the level of HR, but also in the way that we think, just as you said, because it's the patterns in which we think that is our real asset to any workforce or any professional group or nonprofit.
All good thoughts from both of you. And it's funny because in my last job, now again, I don't have much professional experience just yet, as I'm just starting out. In my last job, both of the teams that I was in both departments, it was dominated by women. We had one male figure. So it goes to show that at least in that industry higher education, there was a lot more women representation than men, and we knocked all our projects out of the park. Um, but as both of you are very involved with different organizations and you mentor and give advice to young professionals, what are some things that you've been doing to help guide and prepare this next generation of professional women? Whether that be events, whether that be, mentoring sessions, what are things that you've been doing? Irina?
So I actually had a bit of a different experience in my career, starting out. And actually for the first 20 years of my career, I was an engineer as an undergrad, and I was working as an engineer before I moved into financial services, both of which are extremely male dominated.
Right.
And so I was definitely the minority, especially as I moved up throughout my career. I was definitely the minority. And so for me, I saw a lot of these challenges that we discuss and face them firsthand, and really kind of experienced that what they call the boys club in these industries. And so what I kind of made it a point to do, especially as I became a little bit more seasoned in my career and had more advice to give just through the experiences that I had, was I did create a podcast called Decoding Destiny. And it was a podcast that was focused on talking to professional women, very senior in their careers, focused on a topic. Each episode was focused on a topic that women tend to face in their careers, and really just giving a voice to women and how they dealt with those challenges, because I think that is the one thing that is difficult. We talk about the challenges, we talk about the situations, but what are we telling these women to do in the face of those challenges? What are the options that they have without them kind of creating a negative work environment? And so I think really giving women the tools to handle themselves in these situations and as they progress in their career, I think is really important. Also, as president of the Hellenic Professional Women, I think that giving a voice to a lot of the women through our various speaker series that we have a Greek Power Girl series where we focus on women that have done pretty cool things in their careers and giving their advice to women that are maybe just starting out. All of that's really important. And let's not forget the power of networking. And I think that creating an environment where women can network and feel comfortable sharing with each other is so important, because we do tend to network differently than men, as Chris said. I think that there's a million things that we're juggling, and I think that we tend to look at networking differently. We tend to do it differently. So really being able to facilitate an environment where women do feel comfortable reaching out to each other and making these connections and asking of each other. I think that that's where we tend to fall short. Men don't have as much of a problem asking for these favors. And when I say favors, I mean, whether it be just a professional introduction or something like that, women tend to get nervous, shy, embarrassed, like, oh, what are they going to think? But the reality is when you're networking and someone's there to network, everybody's asking of each other, and we should be comfortable and feel comfortable asking of each other, because that's how we're going to help each other grow, get better, rise up. And so looking at that as a positive versus something, negative, which women tend to look at, I think is a big difference that can help us really progress by leaps and bounds.
I totally agree with you, Irina. It's actually it's interesting that you phrased it that way, because really we have to not just say the words, we have to actually perform the actions. We have to support one another in a genuine and sincere way, not just to sustain the current generation, but to serve as a good example to the next generation. We really have to, when we say mentoring, we have to really put our pedal to the metal. When we say coaching, we really have to commit to it, and we have to be, on the one hand, the service representatives for our generation who are still in the workforce very actively, and share our experience, our resilience, our understanding of the world and how it works, with the next generation, so that I understand, first of all, the struggle and why it's been there, and then also their part, how they can grow, where their spaces are, especially, in industries where you still don't see high levels of female representation. Engineering, it's still really not
Male dominated.
it's still not 50-50,
Yeah.
I'd like to see a few more STEM, and we have a lot of women in STEM, and I'm supporting a lot of women in STEM through Philo for Thought and other initiatives. I, want to see more synergy between Philo for Thought and organizations for young professionals and professional women, because that's the future. If you don't go with what the need is now, you don't flourish, not as an organization, as not an individual either. So it's really important.